You are now live on Channel 8 and YouTube.
All right, thank you, Hannah. The time is now 4:01 p.m. I'm Chairman Justice Graves, and I'm calling this meeting of the Capital Improvements Committee to order on this 26th day of November. Please rise and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So to start off the meeting, we do not have a quorum in the room. We have myself, Chairman Justice Graves, and Select Board Member Timothy Toth here. To start off the meeting under Chapter 9, Section 7, Part B, I shall designate the town administrator, who is currently an ex officio non-voting member, as a voting member, as the committee currently lacks a quorum at this meeting because two of our members are not present, and that provides us with a sufficient number to establish a quorum and conduct business this evening. And so with that, we have a quorum with myself, Mr. Toth, and the town administrator, Adam Lamontagne, in the room. So with that, our second order of business is the review and approval of the meeting minutes of prior meetings. In your packet, you have the minutes of Tuesday, November 12th and of Tuesday, November 19th. Does anybody have any general comments or anything that they see omitted or needs to be corrected? And if there isn't, then I would entertain any sort of motion on these minutes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move we accept the meeting minutes of Tuesday, November 12th, 2024, and Thursday, November 19th, Tuesday, November 19th, 2024, as presented.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Do I have any comments or discussion? Once and twice. 3 times, seeing no discussion, I will move to a vote. Mr. Toth, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Lamontagne?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. That was unanimous, 3-0. All right. All right, with that, we will move on to our third item of business, additional community services presentation. Jackie, we have in the packet the scope of work and the your project form, the scope of work from Woodford Electrical, and then the scope of services from SSV Architecture. Okay. Whenever you're ready, you can start.
Okay, so just as a note, our Board of Trustees met last week or the week before, I can't remember, but they voted to move forward to your committee with both of these documents. The electrical, as you can see at the top, is scope. It does not include an estimate of cost, but Bob Sozik, Steve Castle, and myself met with Woodford Electric at the library back in April. And Steve was helping to advise us about any, additional data connections that were recommended. And Bob, has a lot of expertise in terms of wiring and lighting fixtures and that sort of thing. So that includes everything that we came up with for the electrical. And I think Bob and the trustees as well feel that that is sort of the next major piece of work that needs to be done. We have some longitude wiring in the main area of the library, so that's been a concern. So that's the electrical. Do you have any questions or comments?
Does any committee member have any questions or comments on this?
And again, we do have $70,000 in CPA funding. And I didn't write down the Nordforce amount, but I believe it's around 260,000.
Yeah, in the request form, you had said it was 260,000.
Okay,
Three
yeah,
hundred and 23.
okay. So those are, two sources of money for, I believe, John Henshaw, who is, one of our trustees as well as being on CPA, said that the electrical work would fall under CPA. Um,
And then, so how quickly, do you think that you're going to get the architectural, drawings done, and then what's your time? Do you have any sort of timeline on that?
So I think the first step, if I'm not incorrect, Adam, is that we need to sign this agreement that they sent over for acceptance of their proposal for design services.
Yeah, it had to be presented to Capitol, so
So once we engage into that agreement, and again, the trustees voted in favor of doing so, then my guess is this is sort of my first time doing something like to this extent, but that they would provide more detailed
Okay.
Drawings and recommendations. But they've done a number of library type renovations, and sort of on my plan to at least try to visit a few of them just to get a visual.
I know you didn't get a cost from Woodford Electric, but do you have any ballpark on how much this would typically cost?
No idea. I wished I had spoken to Bob. I don't know if they, if they kind of gave him any indication or not, but. I'm told it's not easy work to replace. Old knob and tube wiring. It involves, opening up walls and tearing things out. So, yeah, I don't know what a ballpark would be.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Jackie? Tim?
No, you covered the one I have,
Okay.
and that's just the, even an estimate of cost. That's what the estimate form is all about.
Adam?
I mean, this will follow the same process as the kitchen. I think this is the last project for the library. All the exterior work's been pretty much done, so.
Right. Yeah, we tried to take the projects at the library in order of, priority, the roof, the ramp, the front porch. There were major issues with all three of those, so electrical is the next thing that's pretty serious.
Well, if there are no other questions, I don't have any. So Jackie, do you have anything in closing or?
So just as your process, without an estimate for electric, does that satisfy the capital, review, or is it something we would need to come back to you at some point when we have some figures?
I know that when so looking at the bylaw, it doesn't say specifically, in the past, and the senior center kitchen is one example of it. We didn't have a cost when that was presented originally. So I know that the engineering work, not the engineering work, the architectural design work had a cost associated with it. The almost 7,000, is that what they were quoting?
Yes.
Approximately, yeah. So I mean, it would be up to the committee if they needed you to come back when you have more of a detailed estimate, although you do have the scope of work here. But in terms of presenting, I mean, you presented to Capitol and that'll be included in the report. So in terms of that step of the process, that is done. So I don't think we have anything else. Out of the last call for questions from committee members. If anyone's got anything?
I have them.
None? Okay. Well, thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right.
All right, have a good rest of your night.
Thanks, you too.
Okay. With that presentation being done, in your packets, I just wanted to let you know that we did get the quotes from the school district. Oh, very mess. We did get the quotes from the school district's proposed projects. So you'll see that in the next section of your packet if you're looking there. I did email that out, so just so that everyone is aware of that. Item number 4 on our agenda is to develop our recommendations and to start workshopping our report for fiscal year 2026. Just some key objectives of what we need to accomplish before the select board presentation that we'll do on December 11th. We have to determine our recommendations. We have to update our capital improvement plan for the next 5 fiscal years. I'm interpreting that as FY 2027 to FY 2031, the next following 5 fiscal years after FY 26. And then we need to debate the content of our proposed report and include any other final comments and observations for the selectmen and for the advisory committee members. With that being said, just a big part of our report is what we've been presented so far. You will see that I included in terms of, and the committee can vote things in or out of the report as they choose. You'll notice that I did include a specific section 5 of the capital improvement plan FY 26 to FY 2026 to FY 2031. Especially with some of the projects that have been presented being multiple years out, we should, and with limited capital funding, I think it would be in the committee's best interest to debate how we want to structure projects and structure priority of projects for the next several fiscal years. But that is something new in the report this time, as well as any general committee comments that I have included at the end of the report. If we have anything more in general that is more across multiple categories of projects, or in terms of, hey, we have so many infrastructure or more, mobile vehicle or mobile tanker projects that we really have to start looking at more harshly and figure out how we're going to fund these. Because as we talked about this current cycle, we've seen a lot of these requests before. It's not the first time. And it's probably not going to be the last time, considering that they are still needed items. So that's really what those committee general comments for. However, it's however the committee wants to word that, or if we don't want to include anything. You will notice that there's sort of 2 setups that I have. We have the setup that we've done in the past with those new items. And then we have one where, because the report is pretty lengthy, with the table of contents and a little bit more of a block by block approach to it. However, both of them have the exact same content right now, and they would, regardless of what style that we choose to submit our report in. With that, I think I've led enough of the intro to this. With your package, you also have the current list of capital items that we've been presented this cycle. I did send out an email with the prior ones, but I can send it out again, and I can do more of a review of things in the past that have been approved. I just haven't had time to do that yet, and I can submit a report or a summary of that to the committee ahead of the next meeting. Of course, this report does not include, or the chart does not include all of the projects from fire, and it doesn't include the presentation from Jackie today, which doesn't have a cost estimate associated with it yet. So with that being said, I'll open it up to the floor. What are we thinking so far? And also keeping in mind that we have about 300 to 325,000 in working capital this year. So. Anything anyone wants to start off with?
Well, I think the police are covered with their ARPA funds on their request, so.
All right. Oh, are you talking about, if I'm looking at the sheet, we're talking about the vehicle replacement, that's utilization of ARPA funds, correct, Adam?
I believe all of them would fall under what the chief's looking at, what besides the radar trailer replacement. So it was looking at 140,000 out of ARPA. I'm looking at the department summaries.
Right, you're looking at the department, okay, so you're looking at the chart, you're looking at the individual. But I put together, okay, just department. So besides the bulletproof, I know that the police vehicle request, that's ARPA funds. I know that the police station flooring and the seal coat at the station are ARPA funds. Bulletproof vests, I know that they use 911, and they use department funds for that. The radar trailer replacement is one of the only ones that I have free cash or working capital placed on it. Like, is that what you're talking about, Adam?
Yeah, and they also have about 20,000 in their gift fund too.
Right. Although that's only one-time cost, and that I don't think that we've ever considered the gift funds when we've ever talked about these.
Well, I mean, if there's a little bit of a delta.
Right. So that's important to know. Ooh. So items number 1.
Yeah, I just have a question there on that third line item.
Yeah,
The radar trailer insurance settlement plus free cash. Is the insurance settlement not enough to cover this? I mean, I run into something with my vehicle and I'm responsible for it. It's
right,
somebody hit and destroyed the radar trailer. That's kind of cut and dry.
right. I know.
But yeah,
No, I agree. Adam, has the insurance settlement been,
That will have to be voted on by the board. We haven't received that
you
yet.
haven't received that yet? Okay. So that's sort of something that I'm concerned about.
and that incident was how long ago?
Right. So that's just something to keep in mind. So number 1, where am I looking at? Police, number 19, number 20. All of TCTV's requests, they typically either use their retained earnings or anything out of their, I'm talking about numbers 24 through 32 on the master list.
Yeah, they're gonna be short this fiscal year.
Well, I was gonna comment that, from the public free cash certification, their retained earnings are only at, 3,000. Just a little over 3, well, yeah, just a little over 3,000. I mean, they're an enterprise fund. They can, if they don't have the money, they can't purchase it, but if they were to purchase it and they didn't have the funds, enterprise funds are the responsibility of the town. They deficit, we have to raise it. So, I understand some of what Steve has requested is multiple years out. I mean, some of his are in 2027. But my general comment is that we need to be wary of that. I mean, I don't have a problem with approving it because TCTV doesn't have an issue with its budgetary, but overall, in terms of capital, they're not going to be able to fund any of this, even if we were to approve it. So,
I mean, maybe, Mr. Chair,
yeah, we can, Adam.
working with the general manager at Light and Water on a pilot for TCTV capital. That still needs to be. Still, the Light and Water commissioners would have to approve each one. But that's still, as we're approaching the fiscal year 26 budget.
Right.
Figured that'd be helpful.
No, I mean, that's good information. But I'm not a I'm not a chickens before they hatch kind of person. We only have what we have in front of us, which is what I'm worried about. I know that's been a long-term concern of the town to try and get a pilot with them. But the reality is we don't have one. And we have to plan a budget. The town has to plan a budget collectively, and it's just something to keep in mind, I guess. Tim, do you have any observations or
Just
anything?
hand in hand with that, I think it's wonderful that we can look at enterprise funds or other, but I also think it's high time that TCTV actually gets funded as a town department. As we've been kicking this can down the road for quite a while.
Well, the reality is, Tim, and my concern kind of comes from if they were able to purchase these capital funds,
Yep.
and if any enterprise fund deficit spends, that's the liability on the town. That ultimately has to be raised and appropriated, so it is the town's responsibility to figure out what to do about
I
this.
understand.
Right, that, I know, I'm just echoing what you're saying. One of the things, just to start off the debate, I would prefer if we leave a lot of the bigger decisions until the next meeting, only because we don't have our other two committee members here, and because we don't have the presentations from the fire department yet, which unfortunately will be next week. And that is gonna have to be something that we consider heavily in real time as well. As soon as I get those, I will share those out with everybody so that we don't waste time on that. But I guess what I'll ask the committee right now is, do we want to keep with the same format that we've been doing? Or do we want to change that? And are there any general comments from the presentations this year that we want to give as comments to the select board and the advisory committee? Concerns about, capital funding for enterprise funds, or concerns for, future capital purchases in general. How are we, we can't, in my opinion, we can't live off of free cash to fund these forever.
No.
Because it's just not working. We have too much of a backlog. I mean, I haven't had a chance to go through the whole backlog list of things that we've been presented that just aren't coming up again, because those departments have, dropped those off, but because they have other priorities that they want to present to us. But the value and the cost of those is only getting worse, and we don't have a strategy for it.
In a perfect world, the free cash dwindles and eventually all of it goes away.
Right.
And every year, we kind of hold our breath and we hope and pray to see free cash as our bailout, but then it doesn't become our bailout. So
Right.
that's always something that's in the back of my mind, has haunted me with how we do our town budgeting. And that's the entire time I've lived in the community.
I mean, something that we might want to recommend is that, and this is kind of a stretch, but you don't have to purchase capital funds with free cash, or capital items with free cash.
It's true.
The town may want to consider that any type of revenues that are unexpected, that they should raise and appropriate for a capital project, and think about it that way. Especially anything that would be considered one time, even if we're anticipating it, because this isn't going to work. Just to put it bluntly. And some of this stuff, I mean, I know that the town has gone for things like debt exclusions and capital exclusions before, but that's not a long-term solution, even if any of those pass. So that's just something to keep in mind. So, with that being said, I guess I'll kind of start the ball rolling. Do we want to approve through the fiscal years FY 2026 through FY 2031? And I'm really talking about FY 2026 to FY 2020. Oh, hello, who is on Zoom right now. Could you please identify yourself?
Hi, it's Julie.
Oh, hi, Julie.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Thank you. Julie, I don't know if you know where we are in the meeting right now.
I do. I've been watching it as I've been
Okay.
trying to get on.
Okay. So with Julie being on Zoom right now, Adam, I'm gonna pull you back. You're not gonna be a voting member right now, and we're gonna have it be between Julie, myself, and Tim as the voting members of the committee. So we still have a quorum right now, and Julie just showed up at 4:26 p.m.
So you're all set?
Yeah, well, you don't need to be here to vote, but if you have any input, you can give input. Because I would look to you for certain things. Absolutely. So Julie, do you have any thoughts about what we've been talking about? I know you've been watching.
I do. I'm just not sure how to present that. Everything you're saying and Tim is saying, I'm right there with you. I have some concerns with some of these requests.
Yeah. So what I was going to ask, before you jumped on, Julie, is we can approve, as we've done in the past, the enterprise fund, or retained earnings fund request from TCTV 24 through 32, the non-tax impacting ones onto the capital plan, if the committee wanted to, or we can debate that further. But that's typically the way that we start things off, because everything else we're going to have to talk about other sources of funding, mainly free cash. So I don't know if anybody wants to make a motion relative to that.
You want to recommend TCTV? Capital?
So that's what I'm asking. If
Upon review, in my opinion, upon review, I would vote no on this.
okay,
I mean, if I may, Mr. Chair?
yeah, Adam, what?
I mean, the committee report, they could put subject to pilot.
No,
You don't want to do that?
no.
Okay. So I've heard from the town administrator, I've heard from Julie. Tim, do you have any comments on that?
Just my quick dinner table napkin math here. If we took lines 24 through 32 on the spreadsheet, that's $225,000.
Crazy.
We only have 300 to 325,000 to work with, so we're effectively killing almost everything else on the list.
Right.
I would love to say, let's give everybody everything they want, but the harsh reality is that's not gonna happen.
Right.
And this is an ongoing challenge that this committee has had for as long as I can remember.
Mm-hmm. No, I understand that. I would not recommend for these to be funded out of free cash, or the capital stabilization fund. Because that's just we're not gonna be able to debate any of the other items or prioritize them.
Yep.
It would have to strictly be from the enterprise fund if we were recommending this, or from their retained earnings. It couldn't be from anything else.
I agree.
Well said.
So, until we had a better plan for it, because we just can't absorb that if that was the case. Their presentation was to fund it through the enterprise funds. So I would suggest them as presented, but that's up for the committee to decide. So if I'm hearing from Julie and Tim that you're in favor of recommending those with the caveat that they be non-tax impacting, they've got to come from the enterprise funds or retained earnings, or is that what we're looking at for line items 24 through 32?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Does anybody want to make a motion relative to that?
I'll make that motion, that we look at lines 24 through 32 for TCTV to be funded as non-taxpayer funded expenses from the enterprise
Okay,
fund.
all right. And you're making that as you're moving that to recommend that on the
Yes.
capital report, okay. And I would second that motion, Tim. Julie, did you hear that motion?
I did.
Okay. All right, so we have that motion on the floor. Do we have any discussion, Adam? Do you have any input?
So how I understand the vote is that basically it doesn't come out of the general fund.
Correct, that it's similar to past years. I know that the discussion on the retained earnings came up because of free cash report. But yes, similar to past years, it's gotta be non-taxpayer funded. It's gotta be through retained earnings of the enterprise. Does anybody else have any comments on that? No?
No.
All right, with that, we'll go to the vote. Julie, how do you vote?
No.
Tim?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. That motion passed 2-1. All right. So I will include that items. Adjournment. All right. With that being said, as a general committee comment, do we want to include, and I can wordsmith this for the next meeting, for updating this, that we've got to take a really hard look on our enterprise funds and how we're dealing with capital. I can wordsmith this a little bit better, for the next meeting, but I think that we should make a comment on that to the selectmen because I'm concerned about that as we keep moving through future capital years.
Agreed.
Okay.
I
Julie,
agree.
you good
I
with that?
agree with that.
I'll wordsmith a couple of different options for it. And then we can sort of look at how we're going to present that at the next meeting. With that being said, what I'll also ask this a little out of order. Which format for the presentation would we like to, for the report, would we like to go with? The staple that we've normally done, which is the more black and white with the, I mean, it'd be in black and white regardless. But it was the one label that I'd emailed, original format, and then the one with the proposed format. They're almost virtually the same. But one I kind of just laid it out with a table of contents so that people can more go through each section. It's a little bit easier to work with than the other one, but we can work with either version. It's the same content. Does anybody have thoughts one way or the other?
I'm comfortable with either version. The table of contents on the second one, the 13-page document, it's a little more comprehensive, but it is certainly mirroring what's on the original traditional.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of change how it looked in terms of
Yep.
as it being sort of a report that's being presented as opposed to, the original one that we usually do. It looks more like a transmittal letter in its style and format. But and then if you want to get to any of the sections, you have to know which page each of those sections are on, as opposed to you just click to that. So I mean, I don't mind either way. And I kept it with the exact same information because that would be how the committee has done it in the past with that type of language in the way that we recommend. So that wasn't what I was suggesting that we sort of change, but Julie, do you have any opinions on that?
I do like both, but I do prefer the second one.
Is the second one the one with the colored seal on it, Julie? Is that the one?
Right, yes.
Okay. One you prefer? Okay. I mean, I prefer the newer one just because that's what I had kind of put out there, but I don't mind either way.
Mhm.
I'm near both of them. The author is the one that approves of his own work, so.
Great job.
Yeah, well, it's still the same stuff, just a little bit different.
And a little bit easier, I think.
Okay.
That's the way I viewed it.
So with that, does anyone want to make a motion relative to the style of our report?
I just have one other comment.
Yeah, sure, Tim.
Looking on the newer format,
Yes,
page 3 of 13, the introduction letter.
yes.
It starts off very nicely,
Yeah.
and then we have the little graph and chart in there. I would like to see one more line added, even though we've set it up above.
Yeah.
Put it in there with the
vacant.
vacancy.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we can.
It just kind of hammers that point home just a tad heavier,
Got it.
and it's not unlike other committees and boards in town that have vacancies, so.
Got it. Yeah, we can add that. Absolutely. All right, with that, does anyone want to make a motion relative to which style we're gonna go with?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Steve Hassel has raised his hand.
Oh,
Be on on the recommendation, maybe?
yeah, all right, I'll allow it. Steve, what do you have to say to the committee?
Good afternoon, everybody. I didn't hop on in time for the discussion that you had on TCTV, so my apologies for interrupting you at this time. I just want to I'll remind your committee that when I spoke last week and presented the capital items for TCTV, I did so with it being contingent on funding. And my thought is that if we do get funding and we don't have capital approval to buy things, how can we buy things that we need? So I don't have any issue with the discussion of what you said, but I just want to remind folks of that, kind of strange reality that we're in here, not knowing if we're going to exist in FY26 and if we're going to have any money to spend, and we will have capital needs of some sort. And what I usually present is, yes, a multi-year plan. And what I know we've done in the past with Adam and Carter is use a lump sum disallowed in the budget so that, yeah, there could be 200,000 worth of capital there. I think there's over 100,000 worth of capital this year, and there's a lump sum disallowed, and there's 9,000 in capital that we have to spend. So, we have to spend it wisely, and we have to spend it within the budget that we're given. So that was my thoughts in preparing the requests that we did, and I tried to request anything that we might need and over $5,000 as instructed. And
Yeah, no, and Steve.
I feel I have to do it that way.
No, that's fine, Steve. The discussion, especially because of the free cash report that went out, I had brought it up because on the free cash report, it also includes what the retained earnings are for the enterprise funds, cable TV and sewer. And it's not a secret that, in this year, you guys have very low funds in your cable retained earnings. I know that you did present it and it was included on the report that that it would be funded through the enterprise funds. And I know that we've done that in the past, but I just wanted to make sure that it was clear in our recommendations that, you can go ahead with those, but if there are no enterprise funds or retained earnings to support it, then that would be the only caveat there.
Yes, I understand
yeah.
that. Mhm. Yeah, I just wanted us all to be clear on it.
Yeah, no. All right. Well, thank you, Steve.
Thank you. I appreciate the chance to speak on that.
Yeah, no problem. With that, we will go back to our report style. Yes, regardless of whatever we choose, I'm going to put add the vacancy on it. Does anybody want to make a motion relative to what style of format that we're going to use? for this year's capital report.
So you're looking at changing the format?
Yeah, did you see the two formats that are included?
do.
Yes. Yeah. I'll make a motion to propose the new format that I included in the packet today.
I would second that.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Do I have any further discussion?
Just a lot of effort on your part. Appreciate it.
No, no problem. All right. With that being said, we will go to the vote. Julie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. That was unanimous. All right, so that. And. So. What I would also ask the committee to do tonight is we do have a couple of requests in here that are only being funded through the ARPA funds. That is the number 1, the police vehicle replacement. Number 19, the police station flooring, and number 20, the police seal coat station driveway and parking area. Those, I think I put those in the. I gotta move a couple of those over into the estimated non-taxpayer funded expenses, even though ARPA funds do come from the taxpayers originally. From through the federal government. I'm gonna move those on the spreadsheet. But does anybody have an issue with us approving those capital requests as presented, contingent that they're only being funded through the use of ARPA funds?
No, I don't have an issue.
Okay. Tim, do you have any questions on
I
that?
just have a question.
Yeah.
The meals tax is specifically there for police vehicles
I know.
and DPW trucks, and now we're saying we're gonna move it to the ARPA funds.
Right.
I understand the spirit and intent, but the voters opted for a meals tax for a purpose.
Right.
And I think we need to keep in the back of our minds what the voters had approved and told us they would like to
Right.
do.
Oh, I have to agree with that, Tim.
My only clarifying question, I am not against that understanding of the meals tax funds, and
Mhm.
when the police chief, I remember I had to ask during that meeting, are we funding this through ARPA funds, or are we funding this through any form of meals tax? Because that kind of threw me off guard. Was the meals tax just for police vehicles, or was it for any emergency vehicles or any, highway trucks and such? Because I know we've been using it for the police vehicle replacement, which we need to use it for.
No, I believe it also assists the highway department.
Okay. Because on one of the later items, item number 5 from highway, the utility pickup, I know that
Right.
Bob was requesting that specifically through meals tax. But no, I don't know, Tim, is that your understanding of it as well, that we can use it for other, or that the voters voted on it for not just police vehicles, but for,
No, the
other-
original proposal was police vehicles and
police.
DPW small trucks.
DPW small trucks, okay. So that's just something to keep in mind if we're going to,
That was 2015 or 2016, if memory serving me correct. It goes back a few.
yeah, I was gonna say, it goes back further than I could.
2016, I believe.
2016, okay. Still couldn't vote.
We won't hold that against you, sir.
That's okay. So with that being said, if we're okay with recommending the police vehicle replacement for ARPA funds, that does free up, but also bring in the discussion about the utility pickup truck, to be funded through meals tax. So are we all okay with potentially recommending the police vehicle? I mean, that's the police chief's plan right now, is to fund it through the ARPA funds. Are Are there any general comments from anyone in the committee on
Um,
this?
I'm not sure I'm ready to commit either way on it. I'm just throwing
Right.
it out there as something to bear in mind because we still need to
Right.
see what fire department's gonna present.
Right, that's a good question.
And it's kind of hard to make a decision now when we don't have all the moving pieces of the puzzle in front of us.
I agree.
I agree as well.
Okay. So we'll hold off talking about the police vehicle replacement and the whole conversation with meals tax, but it is good to at least get that out there to start. With respect to the police flooring and the police seal coat, it appears as though from the presentation that the police chief is ready to go ahead with those on the ARPA funds. And the ARPA funds do need to be utilized or committed before December 31st, and then they have to be spent. What is it, by 2026, Tim?
That's my
That's
understanding.
your understanding of it. All right, is that your understanding, Adam? That it needs to be spent by 2026? That they have to be committed now?
We need a contract at hand
Right, that's
by
right.
the end of December.
Contract in hand before December 31st. So I'm looking at items number 19 and 20. Those would also be funded through ARPA, so I don't know what the committee's feeling is on those in terms of any, do we want to hold off on any recommendations on those until the next meeting, or what do we want to do with that?
I would suggest that we vote on that tonight because it's ARPA funding and it needs to be taken care of.
Yeah, it has to go out to bid.
Right,
At least the police
those
station,
both still have to go up to bid.
police station upgrade.
Okay, all
Holly's been working on that.
right. Tim, do you have any comments on that or thoughts?
No, just, we're into the 11th hour with ARPA.
I know.
Each day is hurting us at this point.
I agree. All right. Well, with regards to at least the two ARPA items, does anyone want to make a motion on recommending those as presented?
So moved.
All right. All right, I have a motion. I have a second. Those are items number 19 and 20. That was Julie. All right, I don't have any further comments or discussion on it. Tim, do you have anything? No, Julie,
No,
Adam? No. All right, so with that, we'll go to the vote. How do you vote, Tim?
Yes.
Julie?
yes.
And I vote yes as well. That was unanimous. All right. With that, so I will update the report to reflect the votes that we've at least taken so far tonight. With the rest of these, I mean, there's going to be a lot of discussion that we're going to have on free cash. I guess in general, and we don't have the fire department's presentations yet. Is there anything any committee members are thinking of prioritizing more than, you know, how do we sort of want to line this up? I know that this committee's always been a safety focused committee in terms of what our recommendations have been. So I would probably, think to recommend along those lines, but is there anything that stands out as more important this particular cycle than anything else? And I know that's saying a lot because a lot of these requests are high priority. For a lot of these departments, they've been asking for a couple of years now, so that's not an easy ask. But that's essentially what we're tasked with, is how are we going to prioritize or recommend funding for one thing versus another in any given fiscal year?
Well, my suggestion would be that I would highly support highway.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep, Adam.
With what Julie said, especially with the chief wants to take the cruiser out of ARPA, I would suggest with highway, the utility pickup.
Right, and that's what Bob had presented, and that's what we had talked about. We're talking about meals tax or ARPA funds for item number 1, which is the police vehicle replacement. And then if ARPA funds were used for that, then the utility pickup
Yeah,
would,
makes sense.
would be switched with that,
Correct.
right? That's something that we'll have to look at. In terms of the capital plan for FY 2027 for FY 2031. I would also incline that if there's anything really close that we would want to recommend this fiscal year that we couldn't, and we don't know what funds we're going to have available next year, understanding this would have to be updated in future years. We're going to need to prioritize if we want to fund those and say FY 27, FY 28, FY 29, and have a strategy for how we want to break that out for some of these requests, because otherwise they'll just sit here. And the other thing to keep in mind too, and I can take a look at these. For the next meeting, I could break out a report of past reports by like category, like some of them are vehicles, some of them are more infrastructure, so that we can see what types of requests we're getting from most of these departments. We know what we've gotten from these departments because we've always labeled them, with their department and, what type of, requests, but what type of items are we receiving that we have to keep spending capital on, whether again, it be anything infrastructure related, anything, related to vehicles, or any other sort of, odd and end, facilities, etc. So I can break that out if the committee would like me to. And I can also, for the report, I know we had talked about this, what has been approved in years past, so that we can sort of have a whole scale look at this. Because we have to have a whole realistic look at this, because otherwise we're just, my thinking has been that the last few years we've recommended a certain set of capital, but it never seems to move the ball one way or the other. And we have to start challenging the advisory committee and the select board to push in one direction or the other. Whether or not they do that or not, this is a recommending body, but I'm thinking from that approach, more information is better than less information, and including all of what we've done. I do probably a 5-year look back on town meetings, including what has been funded through town meeting in the reports. They can see what we've prioritized or what town meeting has prioritized over the years. So we can see where we've been, where we are, and where we could be going. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It does. Forecasting the out years, at this point, it's a forecast, because obviously we can't commit working on the FY 26 plan. We can commit out beyond that. But
Right,
we can at least start to lay it out, have a plan. That said, as I look at this, the other thing I would like to take some serious consideration and discussion, item 13 for buildings and grounds, senior center generator.
Right.
That building is our cooling center in the summertime. It would be ideal to make it a heating and warm-up center in the wintertime, but lacking an emergency generator, it's kind of a fruitless effort.
Right.
And I know there are other moving pieces with the senior center as well. And it's been a topic of discussion at a few of the select board meetings. The kitchen is a huge priority, and I do know we are missing out on opportunities through the Massachusetts Outreach Council for a warm lunch every day for our seniors. That would be phenomenal. And that's been multiple years where we've just kind of, again, just like the Scout Hall project, we start something and then it kind of goes dormant, and then we kick the can down the road. And here again, senior center, we're coming up on 10 years and we're still not done.
Right.
My only comment to that is that there was funding available to put in a kitchen at the senior center. It was utilized elsewhere. So that's a little bit of a frustration there for me, but
Same. Right, and bringing up the senior center so that it is, I know it's our designated emergency shelter, but bringing it up to speed so that it can actually serve in that function 100%.
Yep, absolutely.
Is a major priority.
Oh,
But so aren't so many of these other projects and
It's
the
true.
ones that we're gonna get next week. So,
Right.
Yep.
right. Like there's that grant, like just to point out things that are lower on cost on the taxpayer, but still have a cost share associated with them, you know, the Berry Road design work. Well, if we're gonna do the design work, then we should recommend in future years that we have to fund actually paving the road and fixing the road. Because that's what that leads to.
Yes.
So that's my only thing is that some of these recommendations, I mean, some of these ideally are, especially with infrastructure coming to the, I mean, I know there's more work that needs to be done at the senior center, but the senior center generator is relatively more isolated than, you know, for example, the Berry Road design work, which if that's recommended, then we have to seriously say, okay, well, in so many years, we need to start putting money away to actually deal with that, because otherwise we're not going to have anything for it.
Yep.
So that's just something that might be something that we want to, if we're going to recommend one of these things, then we put it in the capital report, either as a general comment or otherwise, that if we're going to do X recommendation, then the things that naturally flow from it several years down the line, we've got to support that too, and that has to be planned out. I think I just said the same thing at least twice.
Driving the point home.
Yeah, just trying to drive it home. Are there any other general observations from the committee? Or at this point? I think we're kind of all getting a feel for what we're all kind of leaning towards, but until we get the fire department's presentation next week, I don't think we're gonna know 100% where we want to go with this yet. And we're not gonna be able to. So does anybody have any final comments? So actually, before we go there, Aaron or Hannah, can you answer me? Is there a hard stop for next week's meeting on Tuesday? Do we have a hard stop time? I just want to make sure.
Is that Tuesday the 3rd?
Tuesday the 3rd, yeah.
There is no meeting currently scheduled for that day after you guys.
After us, okay. I just want to make sure that we have plenty of time after we do the presentation that we can debate and get our votes in order.
Excellent point.
Because otherwise I was going to recommend, if we didn't think that we could finish next Tuesday, then we're going to have an additional meeting date. We wouldn't be able to vote next Tuesday on an additional meeting date within the next week, because at that point, the 48-hour period has elapsed for almost that whole week. Does anybody here think that we're going to need an extra meeting date, or are we set the way that we are right now?
I think we're set the way we are right now.
Okay. All right. All right. So with
I would
that,
consider penciling one in, and if we don't need it, we can always cancel.
okay, because if we were going to do one, I'm not available on Wednesday night next week, and I know that we do have the town meeting at 6 p.m. I know that that's scheduled. But if we meet at our regular time at 4, we might still, would we be able to do that? Does anybody are there any days that anybody has a preference for more than others? If we have to go into that next week, we have to. I can always submit a draft report to the selectmen. And then when we approve it, I can send it out to them, but it would be better if we have it done before the packet gets released for them, but that might not happen. Julie, do you have a preference on days at all?
No, I don't.
Okay, you don't. Tim, would Thursday the 5th work for you at all? If we had to have another meeting?
I could make it work,
Okay,
and even at that, I think we're pushing.
yeah, we're pushing.
For the packet.
Oh, it won't make it out for the packet, because at that point we're meeting at like 4 in the afternoon. Yeah, so that won't work. But I'm not available on Wednesday. Because afternoon on a Wednesday, I'll be out of town. But like I said, I can always put something in draft that we are okay with on the 3rd. And then we've always made adjustments even right before the selectmen's meeting on the capital report. It's not ideal, but we do have to do that sometimes. Does anybody have an issue if we met on the 10th of December? If that's a possibility.
I don't have an issue.
Tim, do you have a problem with that? We need to do that. Okay. So either on the 5th or on the 10th, we can pencil that in. I will check with Holly and I will talk with Steve about scheduling this room, especially with the 5th. We're having the special town meeting at 6 o'clock. I know TCTV is going to be busy setting up, so that might not work out for us to be live recorded. So I would say leaning more towards the 10th, we were going to have an additional meeting. So with that being said, I don't have any other comments or observations for tonight. Does anybody else have any?
I do not.
Tim?
No?
No, okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, Hannah?
On the 5th, TCTV will be busy at the school pretty much all day, setting up
Okay.
for the live meeting.
That's what I
So
thought.
we would not be able to record a meeting recorded on the 5th.
Okay, so most likely if we were gonna have an additional meeting, we're gonna end up having it on the 10th. Julie and Tim. And Hannah.
Good.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
yeah, no problem. Tim, do you have anything?
Nope.
Or nope, you're good.
I'm
Okay.
just looking at days, that's fine.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Adam, do you have any comments? This evening? Okay. I don't have any comments for this evening. That kind of ropes in agenda items 4 and 5. If anyone doesn't have any comments for this evening, then and if we're all good with where we are so far, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All right, motion's been made and seconded. How do you vote, Julie?
Yes.
How do you vote, Tim?
Yes.